February 20th, 2013. Roll call, please.
Bruce Miller,
Here.
Kirk Martin, John Clark,
Here.
Chris Colbert,
Here.
William Gilbert,
Here.
Patricia Griffin, Karen Kahn.
Here.
Changes to the agenda. I've been asked to swap items 10 and 11 in the agenda. We'll still be covering both of those. Do we have any other changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Public comment. Any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on a subject within its jurisdiction that is not scheduled before them this day. Total time for comment is 15 minutes. Do we have any speaker slips?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Notices that the Budget Subcommittee met on Friday, February 8th, 2013 at 1:30 in the Airport Admin Building. That the Lease Review Subcommittee also met on February 8th at 2:30 p.m. And that on Friday, February 15th, the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. Minutes. Hopefully all received your minutes. I would make a recommendation that we waive the reading.
I'll second that.
All in favor of waiving the reading and approving the minutes?
Aye.
All right. That brings us to the consent calendar, and as I am a tenant of the subject number 7, I will dismiss myself momentarily.
Bye. Lacking a vice chair, I will fill in for the next 30 seconds. Any questions, discussion, or anything on any of the items in the consent calendar? Okay.
No. I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
Okay. Have a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Those in favor of accepting the consent calendar?
Aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Taken care of. You can retrieve him now. How'd I do?
It was 45 seconds.
Oh, 45, I went over. Sorry.
You're still the chair, Bruce.
Oh,
Yeah. Haven't gotten any new jobs.
all right. And that brings us to liaison reports. I believe we do have Councilmember Hotchkiss as our City of Santa Barbara liaison. Anything to report?
No, but thank you for asking, and I'll just sit here and listen carefully.
All right, thank you. And looks like we don't have a City of Goleta liaison this evening, so that brings us to administrative reports, which looks like it also includes one action item. Number 9, airport staff has recommended the approval of a 20-year lease agreement with the United States Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration for 2.5 acres of land for the air traffic control tower. We all know how much we need that. And that is with no monetary consideration. Is there any discussion? Questions?
As hard as it is to believe that lease actually does expire September 30th of this year, and I know all of us are still referring to it as the new air traffic control tower. So, it was a bit of a surprise to all of us. But it actually was begun in 1994, and they completed and moved in 1997. And currently they have 55 employees working at the terminal building. And the area that they service covers all the way from Carpinteria to San Luis Obispo and as far north as Paso Robles. The term of this lease is 20 years, and under the Airport Improvement Program, Federal Grant Assurances, Section C, we are not allowed to receive any monetary compensation for the land. The FAA, however, does pay us for all utilities that we provide, and we're asking for a recommendation to City Council that we be able to take this lease as described.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I move we accept the lease as presented.
I will second that.
All in favor of accepting the lease as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. And that brings us to item 11, taken out of order, the fiscal year 2013 mid-year review.
Yes. This evening, I'm going to present some trend indicators of our industry, the aviation industry, take a look at our revenue outlook for mid-year, and also compare it to 2011. Look at our expenditures. We did request City Council to make an adjustment to our budget. And this year I've included a short summary of the other funds that we have at the airport, and then just a short summary. The trends, it seems like aviation is in the news. Recently, United, Delta, American, and Southwest announced that they were the strongest 4 airlines, and they were operating with less capacity this year, capacity meaning seats and aircraft, than they were in 2011. And by doing so, they're all looking for profits, and that's a good thing. And you heard, I'm sure, that American and U.S. Airways announced that they were merging. And at the end of that merger, which is predicted to take at least 18 months, is my understanding, they would be the world's largest airline with number of seats and number of aircraft. Our seats are up 3.3%. Part of that is due to U.S. Airways bringing in an A319 aircraft, which started January 7th. So we're really pleased about that. And additionally, you'll recall last summer we had seasonal service to Portland by Alaska. So that added seats for a 3-month period. Our cost per in-plane passenger is still relatively low compared to other airports our size at $9.40. And I might say that does include debt service. So, I mean, that includes the cost for operating the new terminal and also repaying our debt. So it's good. Our passenger traffic for the last, actually 7 months, I think, we've been up, and that's really, I hope this trend continues. Right now, for the mid-year, we're up 3.5% over the same period last year. General Aviation also is reporting and reading some industry reports that they anticipate an upswing in corporate traffic for 2013 between 5 and 7%. That's a healthy increase in corporate activity. Fuel sales nationally, they're expecting those two to go up 7.27%. New aircraft sales increasing. We were hearing just the other day about the new Gulfstream 650 coming out. Beautiful aircraft. So I don't know that we have one on the field, but we could accommodate it should they elect to come.
I think we've only made 5 so far, I've heard.
Oh, darn, I know. But they could still come. Our revenue outlook is good this year. We're about 3.3% above our target, which would be half of our projected revenues for the year. So we're coming in at $7.6 million through the end of December. And we're actually 6.2% ahead of this same period last year, which is good. Gift shop activity is up 22%, $2.38 per in-plane passenger. That's healthy. Restaurant equally doing well, 24.9. Their target at the restaurant is $4 per in-plane passenger, and I really think they're going to close that gap before too long. Rental car revenue is on target, and our parking, remember how dismal it has been, it's coming back. In Christmas, we were just down 2% from budget, which is really good because I increased budget by $300,000. So keep your fingers crossed. Commercial industrial property, Rebecca does an excellent job, as she knows, so everything is just full. She has, our revenues are up about 3.2%. And we're collecting 98% of all of our lease income on time, which is also important. Commercial aviation revenue, once again, it's up. Our landing fees are up 12.8%. Building rental is also up, not because they leased all the space that they could, but because of our rates. and they are now using boarding bridges. Alaska there for a while was not doing it, but they are now. So all the airlines that can use the boarding bridges are using them, and they're back in service. Remember, we had a long period of time where Boarding Bridge 3 was out because of the ramp work we were doing at the terminal to get that completed. So now it's back in service. Unfortunately, interest income continues to go down. So this year we're 26% below our budget target. TSA reimbursement, we will get a new agreement signed. Tracy's actively working on that. And when it does come in, then the amount that we'll have in the new contract is about $50,000 less than it has been in years past. But we will still be getting some reimbursement for our patrol activities. This chart gives you an illustration by our main lines of business for our actual revenues in 2012, which were $14,764,000. Our budget for this year, 2013, $14,007,000. We were being conservative. Half the year is 7.3, and we're at 7.6. Expenditures, we're really under this year. Right now, we have spent through December $5.7 million. That's 14% below budget target, and that's primarily because there are some major, I don't know if I put that, I did put it up there someplace, but salaries and benefits, of course, we're below because we've got vacancies, continue to have vacancies. We have just furlough savings with the TAP, that's the Treatment and Patrol Unit, and that was a negotiated agreement that they did with the union for furlough savings this year. Supplies and services, 35% under. And our maintenance superintendent and maintenance coordinator are working on maintenance contracts for elevators, escalators, boilers, HVAC systems, whatever, and those are all coming in right now. So we won't finish the year this way. They promised that they wouldn't do that. Our ARF expense, there's no variance. They're utilizing all of that expense. Special projects, that's our parking shuttle, and it's pretty much on target. Equipment is below, and part of that is just scheduling. So we probably won't use all of our equipment money, but we might. This is a summary once again with 2012 at $11.8 million. Our budget's 13, and we have, as you can tell, between 6.5 and 5.7. So overall, I think we have about $1.8 million more in revenue than we have spent in expenses, but that does not, that's pre-capital. That's before debt service and capital, but it's still, we're doing, I think, well. You'll recall last year we had some capital shortfalls. By the end of June 2012, we had corrected all of that with the exception of an override in the airline terminal improvement project. We were waiting on funds coming in from FAA through our grant program to reimburse us for that. So we did ask City Council.
Want to go back?
Please.
I usually get chastised for going too slow.
We did ask Council to move that grant money, the $750,000, into our capital fund to reimburse us. So now we're balanced and should be, that whole account should be fine. So we're cleared up with all those shortfalls.
Yeah, you're right.
Please. Other funds. Our grant fund, Airport Improvement Program grant fund, we have a partial grant. We have a grant which covers a partial cost for the rehabilitation of 3 taxiways. We anticipate the balance of that grant by September 30th. Passenger facility charge, you'll recall that those funds are dedicated to repaying 49% of our debt service on the terminal project. And we're sitting with a surplus in that fund because we started collecting the money prior to the completion of the project. So we'll always have a surplus there. Unfortunately, we can't pay 49% of the debt at one time. It doesn't work. Customer facility charge, that's for the rental car quick turn facility. It's doing well, as it has a surplus balance as well. The T-Hanger Fund, the rental income is on target, and the airport does subsidize that fund this year about $18,500. So in our, once again, revenues are good, expenditures are being conservatively maintained. The adjustment was approved, and we did meet with Budget Subcommittee on February 8th and presented the financials. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do. Thank you. Hazel, thank you for the report, and I did attend the Budget Subcommittee meeting, so appreciate all the effort that goes into putting these numbers together. From a presentation standpoint, there's a slide there that compares 2012 to 2013, 2013 year-to-date versus actual.
Mm-hmm.
As a suggestion, and I don't know if this slide is going in front of City Council reporting, but would be, I think, would be helpful just to give you some sense of where our eyes should be, is having a variance column, in a different color,
Put that in.
showing, because you're presenting figures in your bullet points. As an example, the TSA reimbursement or the interest income negative variance. I just don't have a sense of scale on, gosh, is that what we're talking about? $10,000? Are we talking about $100,000? But this would probably be a great roadmap to segue into the presentation, kind of drilling down into your expense variances, or positive and negative,
Right.
just as a suggestion.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, I can certainly do that. Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Well, thank you again, and that takes us to item 10, the 2014 budget and department reorganization.
Okay.
A great new picture.
Got tired of seeing the old template with the old terminal.
That's a nice shot. You probably didn't even need to Photoshop that.
This evening, we thought we would give you a preview of kind of one of the major proposals that we'll be presenting to Commission as well as Council. And because we're proposing to do some shifting in terms of our organization and add positions, we wanted to kind of give you a heads up and kind of let you digest it before we hit you with the budget in total, which we will do in March. The airport department has 8 programs that encompass all the services that we provide. We have 54 employees that are roughly divided. Our administrative type programs comprise about 17% of our employees, maintenance 44%, security and operations 35%. And security has definitely increased its program since September 11, 2001. One of the issues that Hazel mentioned in her report was the fact that we have savings because of vacancies. The patrol positions that we added after September 11, 2001, we found have been finding very difficult to keep filled, and right now we have 2 vacant positions. And it just has been an ongoing problem, but we're hoping to resolve it. We are hiring it as I speak. The reason that we're proposing a reorganization is that over the last year or two, we've realized that we have what we call some gaps in service. They're current service demands that we feel the department is stretched to their limit in terms of providing. And also, we're looking to the future and being able to provide the services that we do. One of the reasons is increased workload due to the impacts of the new terminal. And, the question might be, well, you knew you were going to have a new terminal. Why didn't you, anticipate all these impacts? Well, we did to a certain degree. We added custodial staff ahead of time. But many of the new systems in the terminal, as well as now we have concessions post-security, which poses a whole new ballgame. They're operations that we didn't have in the old terminal. Also, TSA regulations and procedures continue to be developed and implemented, and they don't seem to stop, and it really does have an impact on our workload, which I'll discuss in a moment. Also, we want to realign some of our programs to improve supervision and span of control issues, particularly in our security program, and I'll show you that in a moment as well. And then finally, to provide some research, financial management, and analytical support in our business and properties program. Oh, I might forgot to mention that in October we met with all of our program managers who are responsible for those 8 programs, and we discussed what the issues were, the workload issues. And every division has a workload issue or has things that they would like to do. But really at the end of the day it was a consensus that we should put our effort into resolving the issues that we have in the security program with workload and staffing. And I was very pleasantly surprised that everyone was able to look at the big picture in the department as opposed to looking at their own specific program and fighting for what they felt they might need. I'll discuss the business and property management program proposed change first because it's separate from the larger issue. As you know, the business and property management program is responsible for all of our property management, financial management, our budget and capital program, grant management, purchasing, accounts payable and receivable, and so forth. As a reminder, this program is responsible for bringing in the $14 million a year in revenue that we earn at the airport through our leasing and user fees. Also in grant management, since 1987, we've received over $100 million in FAA grants. So the work that this division does is very important to our financial well-being. We are staffed by 1 property management specialist, 1 administrative assistant, 1 administrative specialist, and an accounting assistant, and that position is vacant at the moment, and the program is overseen by the assistant airport director, Ms. Johns. What was identified was a need for a position in this program that could perform higher level analytical work, research, report writing, and financial planning, and assist Hazel in the work that she does. So what we're proposing is that we reclassify the vacant accounting assistant position to an administrative analyst position to accomplish that need. The security program is what I identified as being the kind of our major focus, and its charge is to comply with transportation security regulations, complying with TSA security directives, and they also provide a patrol or security function in our commercial industrial property. The security program is made up of several different smaller programs or divisions. We have airport patrol, which is comprised of 1 supervisor and 16 full-time employees plus 15 hourly employees. And here we have the span of control issue. There's just 1 supervisor and many, many more employees than I think can be reasonably supervised in all that that means. Patrol provides our armed law enforcement officer with arrest authority requirement that the TSA requires, as well as they enforce local, state, and federal law. They administer our ground transportation program, and they also provide emergency response. So what we're proposing here to recognize the numbers of employees that the patrol supervisor oversees, as well as the increase in and complexity of TSA regulations that he is responsible for seeing get enforced, the reporting that's required and so forth, that we reclassify that position to what will be equal to what the Harbor Patrol Supervisor is for the city. Under the security program, we also have traffic control and exit lane monitoring. There's no, I haven't figured out a fancy word for labeling that, but 19 hours a day, we have 15 hourly employees plus one full-time regular position that monitors the terminal curb, which is about 3 times longer than the old terminal's curb, as well as the ground transportation lane with the taxis and limousines and so forth. And they monitor the terminal exit lane to prevent unscreened passengers from getting into the secure area in the departure lounge. And then they also assist with vendor escort. One of the things that we were surprised was the volume of activity with the concessionaires and their vendors, starting from 4 o'clock in the morning till late, well, probably early evening, from newspapers to the Berryman to UPS to the vendor or the concession employees needing to empty trash. They need to be all these people need to be escorted in and out. So it creates quite a workload, far more than we thought was going to happen. I mean, we knew it was going to happen. We just didn't realize the volume of activity because we had no concessions after security before. The proposed changes right now we spend about $174,000 a year on 15 hourly employees, and it's quite the challenge to fill all the 19 hours a day time slots with these 15 employees who our job is not their only job, and with even though most of them are very good employees, still they may have 2 or 3 other jobs trying to make a living, and the commitment to this job is maybe not as high as some other position they may have. So what we'd like to do is convert some of these hourly positions into 3 full-time operation aides positions, and then reduce the hourly employees for this function to 7. That will help provide some consistency with the staffing, as well as the hourlies will help kind of fill in the hours that the 4 full-time positions won't be able to fill. So we'll be able to use some of the funds that we now use for hourly employees to offset this cost. The Security Operations Center is kind of like our little communications hub for the airport. It operates 24 hours a day. They monitor all the security cameras in the terminal. They monitor access control alarms. They do dispatching, answer phones not only for the public but in communication with our crash line, which is, if we have an aircraft incident and the tower picks up the I've always called it crash line. I don't know what else to call it.
That works.
That dispatches the fire department. Well, our people also get involved in that as well. And documentation. They have to do logging not only for the daily activities that go on in the division and out on the airfield, but there are communications that have to do with badging and identification of people, and there are various logs that must be, separate logs that must be kept for that. They also fill in the badging office. It used to be, the top picture in 2006, our Security Operations Center was in the rental car building when it was in a separate building. And we did badging and the Security Operations Center in one little place. Well, the badging became such a big operation that we had to split them and put the badging office in a separate, its own separate office or building. And then the Security Operations Center activity also increased, as you can see below. Up on the top, we had 2 little screens to look at, and now you can see how many screens that the operator has that's in the picture below. We more than tripled the cameras and also the access control points where alarms can go off between the old terminal and the new terminal, just because of the, you know, the size of the new terminal. So it also increased the workload. Currently, it's staffed, the operations center is staffed with 1 security operations specialist and 4 operations specialists. These are some examples of changes that have occurred between the old terminal and the new terminal. In the monitoring of the security cameras as well as the access control alarms, there's been a significant number increase in alarm contact points, more, like I said, more than triple in the old versus new. And then the alarms received that come through when someone does their badge, goes through the door maybe and forgets to close it or forgets to wait till it closes and latches, it'll send an alarm to our Security Operations Center. They need to, and every alarm requires attention. They need to get, you know, locate where the alarm is on the camera. They need to find out if it's, you know, a concern or not a concern. They may need to dispatch a patrol officer. In the old terminal, in fiscal year 2011, for the first half of the year, we had 19,000 alarms. Skipping forward, in 2012 is when the new terminal opened. It went up to 50,000. And now in this full year of operation in 2013, we're at 83,000 for the first 6 months of the year. So again, every alarm has to be attended to, and it's just an increase in workload for the employees in the center. Another additional requirement that the TSA put on, instituted for us, we used to, when you had vehicle access to the terminal ramp, you would go by a, what do you call it?
Sensor?
A sensor type thing, and you have a little clicker, and you know it tells the sensor who you are, and you just click it and go by. Well, the TSA said that that procedure, which we've been using forever, was not acceptable, and we had to institute another procedure or have a person sitting at each end of the terminal ramp to physically verify badges of people driving onto the ramp. So this change in procedure we came up with is that in the morning, for instance, if the FBOs have to fuel an aircraft during the day, they will call the SOC and verify that their employee is authorized to go on the terminal ramp and that they are going to go on the terminal ramp. Then when that employee actually needs to go on the terminal ramp, they contact the SOC, who again needs to verify their security badge. And then once they're authorized to go through, they go about their business, but the SOC then has to log the calls and the authorization. This happens about 160 times a day. When we were talking about this procedure, I thought, how many could there be? 50? 20? had no idea. Not only do all of, airport department employees go onto the terminal ramp, but you have fuelers and you may have the lav carts that when the airlines are emptying the lavatories on the plane, they drive the waste over to this side of the airport to the dump station. You have maybe a mechanic that might need to go over there. So there's a lot of activity which requires a lot of back and forth telephone conversation, radio conversation with the SOC as well as the documentation. In dispatching, emergency calls for service have tripled. And what emergency it could be would be like a medical emergency, aircraft alert, call to the checkpoint for maybe an illegal weapon, car accident. This is all over airport property. We've had, with the escalators and stairs, which we didn't have in the old terminal, we've had more people injuring themselves. So I'm not saying that that is any one reason, but it is interesting to know that our calls have increased. Vendor deliveries have also caused an increase in non-emergency service in the terminal. When a delivery person comes, they buzz the intercom, Security Operations Center answers, they remotely open the gate to let them to the loading dock behind the terminal, monitoring them the whole time. Then they call the concessionaire to tell them they've got a vendor that's at the gate or at the dock and request the concessionaire to escort them, and then they have to log the information. So this is, again, just more activity that's going on in the SOC. The badging office, before 2006, we were badging 400 employees at the airline terminal that had access to the secure areas and were required to go through a background check and be issued an identification badge. Since we didn't have concessions in the secure area, in the departure lounge, those employees, concession employees, were not required to be badged. After 2006, TSA added a requirement that anyone that has access or a need to be on the airfield or the airport operations area, that would be base pilots. We talked to our chair there and our previous chair and our new member, all were required to have background checks and be issued an identification badge for access to essentially the airfield or non-terminal area. The concessions, now that they're post-security, their employees also need to be issued a badge and have a background check. So our badging went from 400 to over 1,500, which obviously increased the workload. And what's involved is, that people turn in the application that has to be reviewed. The badging office has to have them fingerprinted, and then they go through criminal background check. There's training involved, and then also records, of course, that have to be kept and monitored. The proposed changes for the Security Operations Center and badging office would be to add one airport operations specialist, 2 senior operations specialists, and that would allow to have 2 operations specialists in the Security Operations Center for each shift. Right now, we usually just have 1, and it gets to be kind of a handful. And then in times that weren't as busy as others, the senior operations specialists could also get out of the SOC and do some airfield inspections. And then add 1 administrative specialist to assign that person to the badging office. We would reduce, and this is a current employee who has gone to half-time, so reduce that position, airport operations specialist, to a 50% position, and then assign that position is assigned to the badging office. And then assign the Security Operations Center and Badging Office to the Certification and Operations Program. As I said, the security program was just overloaded in terms of employees to be supervised and to be able to do that adequately. The Certification and Operations Program is responsible for our airport certification, which is through the FAA. There are airfield inspections, emergency planning and response, wildlife management, and a host of other FAA requirements. Our noise abatement program, and then they liaison with our aircraft rescue and firefighting crew at Station 8. The staffing, we have one noise operations specialist, and that person retired in October, and the position is vacant. And then we contract with the city for 9 aircraft rescue and firefighting personnel. The proposed changes would be, as I said, to assign the Security Operations Center and Badging Office to this program, and then have reclassify the vacant noise and operations specialist position to an airport operations supervisor, since this person will actually now be supervising, 8 people or close to 8 people. So the proposed reorganization, I'm sorry it looks so small in here, but it was in the memo, the commission memo, to show the changes. In the red is where the changes would take place. The 2 boxes under operations, and then it says Security Operations Center and Badging Office, those 2 blocks used to be under security. And then this chart shows that change. And then it shows the reclass of the accounting assistant, reclass of the airport patrol supervisor, and the reclass of the operations and noise specialist. Cost and budget considerations. We knew we had a big operational need, but we also knew that the cost could be prohibitive. The total cost for fiscal year 2014 will be about a net increase of about $359,000, and that's taking the accounting for using some of the hourly operations aid or traffic budget toward those permanent positions. And then we would also use our, of course, operating revenues. And the impact will be that whatever we spend on operations obviously reduces our capital budget. So that's kind of what the whole proposal is. There's no action required on your part at this time. You know, if you have comments or suggestions or questions, we'd be happy to answer them. We presented this to the Budget Subcommittee on February 8th, and we'll make a full budget presentation, including this, at the March Airport Commission meeting. And then the budget gets filed in April?
Yes.
And for with council, and then the public hearings begin for the city budget process. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments.
Thank you again for all the detail.
Hope it wasn't too much detail.
Hope there isn't a quiz.
Put you to sleep.
Mr. Chair, I do have a comment and perhaps a suggestion. It is, Karen, you are so well prepared for any questions that arise during this proposal to administration. I think the one figure that might be helpful in presenting this on a PowerPoint is looking at your existing versus proposed FTE.
Oh, good.
Okay, might be just, you could do it in your sleep, I'm sure, but it's like how many hours are we proposing versus today, right? Just before and after.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
$350,000, I understand that figure, but but you know, with all the adds and subtractions from part-time, full-time, it's that would be a helpful thing. The other thing that is just absolutely mind-boggling is what the drivers are. And you look at this from an item processing standpoint, whether it's the badge processing or the security events, what have you. But I mean, there was one slide you had in there, and it was just, you had to, if I read that correctly, you were talking about comparative figures for a 6-month period, fiscal years.
For the alarms.
Okay. And it was a figure of like, I wrote it down here somewhere, 83,000. I was thinking, wow, 180 days, right? What does that work out to be? That's like almost, there it is, fiscal year. If I'm reading that correctly, 83,000 events for a 6-month period. That's, I was doing this in the dark, it's about 500 events a day.
Right.
Just for that particular item.
And most of those are, employees that don't close the door or secure the door.
Yeah, I mean, think
But
about
it
that.
requires-
That's
yeah.
460.
I know.
I mean, how many hours in a day? You figure that's a lot of activity.
Yeah, it is.
Anyways,
And that's just one thing.
yeah, no, it's just one item. So, it's an excellent presentation, and it's well justified, and I'm fully supportive of it.
Thank you.
Questions? Discussion? Well, we know you'll have to fold it into your budget, and we'll see how that works out.
All right.
So,
Oh, yes.
thank you again for the detail. And I think that brings us to the subcommittee reports. It's recommended that we receive an oral report on the budget and lease review subcommittees. And were you all giving us those oral reports, or are you?
If the committee members want to make any comments or,
You've heard enough from me.
Yeah, I can just summarize those. And basically, the budget subcommittee was just those two presentations that we've just seen, pretty much in their entirety. And the lease review subcommittee was almost entirely composed of those consent to calendar items, with one additional property management discussion. And that pretty much was the subcommittees. And that brings us to the director's report.
your favorite part. I apologize for not having the passenger count tonight. We had one airline kind of lagging in turning in their numbers. So we got those this afternoon, so we'll get those to you. I have a couple of things I'd like to point out on our communications program. On March 20th at 10 a.m., we'll have a little celebration for completion of the terminal, completion of the historic terminal, the Ovington terminal. And also, we should hear, hopefully, about our LEED certification by then. So we are within a point of getting gold, and so we were responding back to the building council and trying to get that one more point. Would be sad to miss by one. So anyway, if you put that date on your calendar, and yes, 10 a.m. It won't be a gala, but it will be a nice ribbon-cutting event. Hard to duplicate that, huh? On the master plan, as I mentioned last month, we have gone into the alternatives chapter. We are planning to try and set up a committee meeting in March 20th, maybe possibly March 20th, to have the committee again discuss the alternatives and turn over some ideas. This is an additional meeting to the one that we have scheduled for April 28th. We thought we needed more discussion we've gotten a lot of good feedback. And this week we met with both the FBOs and the tower to get their perspective on, the businesses that they're in terms of needs on the field and so forth. So I look forward to that. Commissioner Gilbert contacted me about wanting to relinquish his seat on the committee. I don't know if you want to talk about it, Bill, but to Commissioner Khan. So I thought since we appoint our subcommittee members at commission that we should bring it up here and discuss it or pass the torch or whatever we want to do.
Well, for information, I missed the last one. Because this is not my expertise, I have to do a lot of studying and catch up. And there also may be a possibility I'll be missing some others. So I had suggested someone who I thought was really up on everything and that we're doing. And that's why I had suggested Commissioner Khan. And also why I hate to do it, but I hate to drop out, but I want to make sure we have a good product.
Appreciate that. So it's Commission's pleasure. I just wanted to bring it back to you so that.
I guess that's a nomination. Yeah. No objections?
No.
We would accept that. Thank you for agreeing
Okay.
to serve. And thank you for the time you've served. Okay.
A little arm twisting. The last item I'd like to just point out is the Sister Cities Committee display that they had designed and they put up in the terminal. At the top of the escalators, there was a kind of an inset of the wall where some future art will go, and that's where their map is, and it's to draw attention to kind of their mission and what the committee does. I think not very many people in the community know that. In the director's report, I listed all the sister cities and the year that they were became a sister city. So they are planning also a little ribbon cutting for their display, but they haven't decided on a date yet, so I'll let you know when that is in case you're interested in coming. But it is kind of nice to have these different elements from the community participate in the terminal. So just wanted to point that out. And that pretty much does it for my report, unless you have any other questions.
Not a question, but just an observation. In section C under capital projects, is that going to be the last time we're going to see the line item for the airport terminal project?
That is.
All right, that's pretty historic.
Yeah, it is. I guess I should formally announce.
Just want to point out a little $60 million project being
Thank
buttoned
you.
up after a 2019 year effort.
Yeah.
Karen, I think we can all say that we're very proud of what you've achieved here, both from a physical construction standpoint, but also a fiscal standpoint. But this is a huge, huge deal to take this
It
off
is.
the agenda.
It is, and thank you for bringing it up. I guess we just, finish one thing and we move on to the next, and I do appreciate that. Yeah, the notice of completion was recorded with the county on January 15th, 2013, and we finished the project within our change order and budget allowance, so I think we had $15,000 left or something out of a $63 million project, so that was good.
Huge deal.
I had great staff and consultants that we worked with to finish the project, so thank you.
Great leadership.
Quite an achievement. Need the big scissors to cut this item. Yeah, the big scissors. Okay. I think unless there's any other questions about the director's report, I guess that
Good.
brings us to our adjournment. We are
Thank you.
adjourned. Oh,
I wanted to welcome Commissioner Khan, meant to do that at the beginning. Welcome you back, I should say.
Nice to be back.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
seems like you never left. I guess we did.
How time flies.
Where you going?
All right.
Great.
We are adjourned then. Thank you.